This is Arab Talk on KPOO 89.5 FM in San Francisco. This is Arab Talk with Jess and Jamal. I'm Jess Hannam.
And I'm Jamal Dejani.
Jamal, we have a great show today. We're going to be talking about a lot of things. Unfortunately, we don't have time today to talk about what's happening in Sudan. We'll probably get to that next week, but I'm sure our listeners and viewers know that the Sudan right now is in the middle of a really chaotic situation. We will get to that eventually. But the main topics for today are going to be, basically after harassing Muslims during Ramadan, Israel has been limiting the number of Christians celebrating Orthodox Easter at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It's a big story. Restrictions on religious freedoms, movements. We're going to be talking about that. Another big story, Jamal, is the Israeli spy maker Quad Dream closes and fires all of its employees. The company, which specializes in software to basically hack iPhones for governments, has been halting operations. Kind of interesting. We're going to be following up on that. And this was kind of surprising news to many of us waking up this morning, finding out that the son of the Shah of Iran is visiting the apartheid state. And I think the quote he made was to basically rekindle the kind of warm relations between the Shah regime in Iran and the apartheid regime. So we're going to be speaking a little bit about that. But before we get to those stories, Jamal, we're going to watch a really great interview that you did with investigative journalist and best-selling author James Bamford on a recent article he wrote in The Nation, The Candidate and the Spy, which detailed meetings between, of all people, Roger Stone and Benjamin Netanyahu's intelligence agent from 2016 up until the elections in November. Really incredible story, Jamal, which did not make the mainstream media at all. It's really an extraordinary story.
No, because the distraction was created with the focus on the Russia gate, and no one talked about the Israel gate. But then again, let's watch this great interview with the investigative journalist and best-selling author, James Bamford. When the Mueller investigation was launched to determine Russian collusion in the 2016 presidential elections, FBI agents were tasked to harvest any information demonstrating foreign intervention in the election. They discovered an elaborate covert operation by Benjamin Netanyahu to use high-level secret intelligence to intervene at the highest level on behalf of Trump in exchange for his guarantee to deliver Netanyahu's top priorities: U.S. withdrawal from the Iran nuclear accords and recognition of Israel's sovereignty over Jerusalem by moving the U.S. embassy there from Tel Aviv. Joining us on Arab Talk this week is James Bamford, whose March cover story in The Nation, The Candidate and the Spy, details negotiations and meetings between Roger Stone and Netanyahu's secret intelligence agent from May 2016 up through the elections in November. He is an investigative journalist and best-selling author noted for his writing about the United States intelligence agencies. His most recently released book is Spyfail: Foreign Spies, Moles, Saboteurs, and the Collapse of Americans' Counterintelligence. Welcome to Arab Talk, James.
Thank you very much for having me.
So explain at what point during the Mueller investigation, while pursuing incriminating evidence that Russia colluded in influencing the 2016 elections, did FBI agents come across a separate strand of foreign interference by Israel leading directly to Benjamin Netanyahu?
Yeah, the way I was able to discover all this information was a FBI search warrant and an affidavit for the Israeli agent, and that was dated 2018. So the focus of the investigation was obviously on Russia. It was the Russiagate investigation. But in addition to that, they also focused on who else may be interfering with the election, and that's when they came upon this Israeli agent. And once they did, they obtained a search warrant to find out what his communications were, and that's where they were able to find these communications links between the secret agent and members of the Trump campaign.
So again, what was the time frame of this, and who were the main operatives in these meetings?
Well, this whole event took place beginning in May of 2017 or 2016, I think it is. And what happened was that the Israeli agent wanted to get in touch with a member of the Trump campaign, and so he picked Roger Stone. He was an old friend of Trump, and he felt it was a good way into the campaign. So he began having meetings and phone calls and text messages and so forth with Roger Stone. That's how it began.
So what established Netanyahu's involvement?
Well, Netanyahu was the one who set this in place, and you could tell that because if you read the emails that were intercepted by the FBI, they're attached as part of this affidavit, you can see that the secret agent is making references to what he calls the PM. I have to meet with the PM. The PM said this, or the PM said that. And then also in that same FBI affidavit, the FBI agent writes down, I believe that the PM referred to is the Prime Minister. And there's numerous references to I'm in Jerusalem, or I'm going back and forth to Israel, or whatever. So there's no question that that's who they're talking about.
So why was Israel so keen to have Trump as president rather than Hillary Clinton, given the United States' unqualified support for Israel? I mean, why were they leaning towards Trump? I mean, Hillary Clinton is no enemy to Israel, let's say.
Well, but Trump was pushing, from the very beginning, he was pushing for, a number of the areas that the Israelis were very interested in, particularly the doing away with the agreement with Iran, for example, over the nuclear accords. So that was a key area, and Trump had already said that he was going to do that. What they wanted, what the Israelis really wanted, in addition to that, was to have the United States declare Jerusalem as entirely a part of Israel, as opposed to a negotiated settlement between the Israelis and the Palestinians. President Obama was pushing for a negotiated settlement. He was pushing hard on Netanyahu for that. So Netanyahu was trying to get the Trump people, particularly President Trump, to agree to recognize Jerusalem as being Israeli, 100% Israeli. And in exchange for that, the Israeli agent was providing the Trump campaign with secret intelligence. And that secret intelligence happened to be the information that the Russians were picking up on Hillary Clinton.
Talk about the voter manipulation industry in Israel, in particular Archimedes and Team Jorge, which was recently exposed in a Forbidden Stories feature.
Well, it's interesting. A few weeks ago, or maybe about a month ago, a major report came out from numerous news organizations. What happened was that these major news organizations across Europe and into the Middle East decided to do a very long 8-month investigation into Israel and the Israelis' Israeli companies that are basically private intelligence companies with links to the Israeli government. And these companies manipulate elections around the world. So these major publications. There was the Guardian in London, the Observer in London, La Pais in Spain, Der Spiegel in Germany, Le Monde in France. These are all really major publications, plus Haaretz in Israel. They all got together and formed this joint task force to look into Israeli election manipulation around the world. And they came out with a very big report. It was in each of the news organizations came out with their own report, and they were all basically headline news stories in London, Paris, Germany, Spain, Israel, and so forth. The place that made no news was the United States. So the U.S. Has a tendency, or U.S. media has a tendency to avoid controversial stories involving Israel, and this is a bit absurd to not report on the fact that 30 news organizations got together and discovered that Israel was basically a center for world voter manipulation or election manipulation.
I mean, in fact, you mentioned that voter manipulation is a growth industry in Israel and not discouraged by the government, right?
Well, the government doesn't discourage it because the government probably benefits from it, since these organizations, these private intelligence organizations, are closely tied to the government. A lot of the organizations are made up of former government agents, and so it's not a big leap to think that they're sharing this information with the Israeli government. If the Israeli government has some cooperation with these groups, then obviously they're gaining a great deal of intelligence, if not, even helping with the manipulation. Who knows? But the point is that this shouldn't be going on. People should be able to vote in a democratic process without having the Israelis put their thumb on the scales to get elected whoever happens to be paying them.
Returning back to the Trump election, who was the secret agent deployed by Israel to negotiate with Roger Stone?
Well, the affidavit and the search warrant delete the name. They what they call redact the name. They take it out. And there were a number of other redactions in these documents also. So there was no way to definitively determine who exactly that agent was. I looked at the factors that are listed in the affidavit and tried to see if there were some common denominators with officials close to Netanyahu. One of those people was a guy named Isaac Mulvo. He's a attorney very close to Trump. He's even related to Trump. I'm sorry, he's a agent very close to Netanyahu and even related to Netanyahu. And so Netanyahu picked somebody that was close to him, and this person was close to him. He's an attorney. So there was one other particular common denominator, and that was this person who was a secret agent was sent on a very short notice, a quick turnaround. He had to fly from the U.S. to Rome for a quick meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu and John Kerry, the Secretary of State from the United States. And the meeting had to do with the sort of last-minute negotiations or trying to conclude negotiations over what's going to happen with Jerusalem in terms of a negotiated settlement. So Netanyahu wanted his secret agent by his side, and the secret agent flew over for the meeting and then flew back right afterwards. And this person, Isaac Mulvo, happens to be also the key person that Netanyahu uses for these meetings. He's the key negotiator with John Kerry. So you put all that together, and he may or he may not be, but a lot of the common denominators seem to fit him. It's interesting. The U.S. spent a lot of time going after everybody involved with Russiagate, but they don't seem to want to identify who this person was that was manipulating the U.S. election.
How serious were the charges against agents listed in the FBI's affidavit?
They're very serious. I'll read a few of these here. This says the possible charges were a violation of the foreign contributions ban, which means giving money or something of value to the campaign, aiding and abetting, conspiracy, wire fraud, attempted conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and unauthorized access to a protected computer. And what that basically means is this agent apparently was hacking into a computer.
Ultimately, how was this covert deal with Trump finalized? Did he meet with Netanyahu?
Well, the meetings took place throughout the summer, beginning in May of the time period leading up to the election. And throughout the summer, towards the end of the summer, around August, the actual meetings became less because apparently Roger Stone was getting nervous about this being discovered. So there was no way to tell whether there was an actual meeting at the end, towards the end with Trump. But what you can see is the mission was accomplished, because in September, you had Netanyahu come to the United States and meet privately with Trump in his New York penthouse apartment. And it was a private meeting, but after the meeting was over, Netanyahu and Trump appeared before cameras, and Trump announced just exactly what Netanyahu wanted, which was that if he was elected, if Trump was elected, he was going to declare Jerusalem the capital of Israel, and he was going to recognize Israel as the U.S. As the Israeli. He was going to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, which is something that the U.S. government had not done any time prior to this in any previous administration, because it was the policy of the U.S. government to push for a negotiated settlement of Jerusalem. So that was a major win. That was what Netanyahu was pushing for. And here's his joint meeting at the end, and so everybody got what they wanted. The Trump administration got the intelligence from the Israelis, and the Israelis and Netanyahu got the promise of Jerusalem being recognized as the capital of Israel.
And moving, of course, the embassy from U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
That's right. Yeah, Trump agreed to do that, and he did do that, and that's where it still is.
All of this information was available to the Mueller investigation committee, yet, to quote you, you say, Russiagate investigation of 2016 was the Israeli connection. No details of it were ever revealed in the heavily redacted Mueller report, which we just talked about it, nor was there any mention of an Israeli plot in the similarly redacted Senate Intelligence Committee report on collusion charges in the 2016 election, or in any of the indictments or trials stemming from the Russiagates. This is an omission of great magnitude by both the Senate and the U.S. Justice Department. What do you attribute this to?
Well, it's obviously politics. There's no legal reason that they couldn't reveal this information. They certainly revealed volumes on the Russian interference, or the alleged Russian interference. They ended up not finding any Russian collusion. What they did find was Israeli collusion, but because of politics, which is frequent when it comes to Israel, nobody wanted to mention this event because it was potentially harmful politically for the White House, for people in Congress and Senate and so forth. So I can't get in anybody's head, but that's my assumption as to why it happened.
I mean, do you believe that the whole scenario about the Russia Gate was a distraction or deflection from what was really happening and what was real interference in U.S. Elections.
Well, that was what obviously came out of the whole thing. I mean, there was no questions that the Russians interfered at the beginning, where they hacked into the Clinton campaign and got emails from the Clinton campaign and the DNC. That all happened before the Mueller team was put. The Mueller investigation came forward. The Mueller investigation was to see, okay, we know the Russians got these emails. What the question is, was there any collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians? Did the two groups work together in any way? And the end result of the 2-year Mueller investigation was that no, there was no collusion between the Russians and the Trump campaign. But as we've just been talking about here, there was certainly collusion and direct evidence of it with the Israelis. But it hadn't come out, and that's why I was working on this book for several years. The book looks at my book Spyfail, which looks at the counterintelligence activities of the United States. In other words, looks into what kind of a job the FBI is doing in terms of catching spies and so forth. And it was only because of digging into documents and materials that I was able to come up with these FBI documents. So a couple of documents escaped. They were overlooked by the press. But I was able to get them and use them in my book, and also for a cover story for The Nation magazine.
Now, I mean, you uncovered, this is a huge story. I mean, a lot of information. And Trump has been going around now, of course, is the presumed going to be the Republican candidate, saying that he got robbed in the previous elections. And you have the Biden administration. I mean, this is a story, if you look at it, politically speaking, this is something that the Biden administration can easily use and say, no, wait a minute, you got elected because the Israelis helped you to get elected. But we hear nothing, and we hear nothing about this from the Biden administration when they criticize Trump. We don't hear anything about it in the mainstream media. Why is that?
Well, with regard to Biden, key reason is because the key conspirator in this whole plot is Benjamin Netanyahu. And I don't think, I mean, if you just look at Biden's past and his current activity, he doesn't want to do anything that offends Benjamin Netanyahu, because if he does, he's afraid of alienating a large segment of the voter population in the U.S., or the pro-Israeli group. So he like nothing to do with this, I think. And to a large degree, it's the same reason for the media. I think the media avoids a lot of the controversies involving Israel. They avoid them like a plague. I mean, you hardly ever see a lot of the things that you actually. I mean, the irony here is that you really have to read the Israeli press in order to understand what's going on in Israel. Haaretz is a great newspaper. The journalists there are fantastic news journalists, because they report basically everything that goes on. But over here, you don't get it from the mainstream media in the United States, and I think that is reflected in the fact that there was sort of a media blackout on this whole story.
How does this affect U.S. intelligence and counterintelligence? I mean, we know the politics. You explained it. You very well explained it. How that plays in covering up for Israel. But you have dedicated hundreds, if not thousands, of FBI agents, CIA, etc. When they know something is affecting U.S. national security, but then the political factions are basically covering covering it up? I mean, is there a schism? Is it causing any
I've
issues?
interviewed a lot of FBI agents, obviously. I've been doing this work for a very long time, and I've developed a lot of FBI agents as people that are, contacts, people that I deal with, and on a off-the-record basis. And so I talked to them about all this stuff, and a lot of them are very angry because their job, the whole job is to make arrests and to uncover espionage and interference and so forth in the U.S. government. So they're very frustrated. A lot of them are very frustrated that they come up with this information. They find it, they dig very hard, and they conduct a several year long investigations and so forth, pointing to Israeli spying or whatever, or in this case, election interference. And then it goes nowhere. It's just sort of dumped and or put back in the file, and the file drawer is slammed shut. So for them, it's very frustrating. It'd be the equivalent of me spending 2 years writing a book and then having somebody say, well, you can't do anything with the book, politics. So it's very frustrating for a lot of them. And, I feel sorry because that's what they go into this occupation for, is to uncover illegal activities, and then they're stymied because of high-level politics.
It should be also frustrating to millions of Americans, really. The article in The Nation is The Candidate and the Spy, and if you haven't read it, our audience, and of course, I recommend your book, Spyfail, Foreign Spies, Moles, Saboteurs, and the Collapse of Americans' Counterintelligence. James Bamford, thank you for coming on Arab Talk.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That's the voice and the face of James Bamford, investigative journalist, award-winning author, talking about his article in The Nation, The Candidate and the Spy. Jamal, this is a big deal. This is basically one of Trump's closest confidants having intimate conversations with the intelligence agency of Israel, leading up to the elections. This is a huge deal, and it got completely missed by the mainstream media.
Well, it's a huge deal. I mean, this is, of course, the article is that James had written in The Nation. It just gives you a sliver of the complete picture. Really, people should focus on reading his book, which details it, But anyway, this is the deal. The meetings were happening, and the quid pro quo to help Trump getting elected by feeding him all kinds of information.
Right.
And the reward for Israel was, which Trump promised, was to move the U.S. embassy into Jerusalem and recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And sure enough, shortly after he got elected, Trump came, this is before he was now president-elect. He showed up at a meeting at the Trump Tower, and Trump made that declaration saying that, once he takes over, he's going to move the embassy from Tel Aviv into Jerusalem. And that happened. At the same time, everybody was paying attention to Russiagate and Hillary's emails. But the real big story, it wasn't the Russian. It was the Israelis. It's a very interesting article. No one talks about it. You don't have anyone from the Senate Counterintelligence Committee discussing it. You have very frustrated FBI agents and other intelligence agents, security. This is according to my discussion with James Bamford. And the media, mainstream media, just
missed it.
Not missed it. They just dismissed it. I don't think they can read. They know what's going on, but no one wants to touch Israel. No one wants to talk about it No one wants to reaffirm its meddling in U.S. presidential affairs. And even now, Trump being the presumed GOP candidate, this should be used against him, and I guarantee you the Biden administration won't mention it.
No, I think that's exactly correct, Jamal. And see, this is part of the larger picture that we've been reporting here and talking about on Arab Talk for many, many years, is how the Israeli intelligence services spy on the United States, anyways, its so-called closest ally, have infiltrated the United States, both politically and in other ways, through its surrogates and through its Hasbara campaign. And now you have the former president's, among his closest confidants, Roger Stone, having these intimate relations and working out a deal that's supposed to influence U.S. foreign policy. So, yeah, I guess I misspoke in saying that they missed it. They didn't miss it. They chose to ignore it, which is even more damning than missing it, because the information was out there. There were some vague reports of Roger Stone meeting with the Israeli agent, that were circulating, but it never made the mainstream kind of attention, Jamal. It was a big story, and I would say it continues to be a big story. And as I've predicted, I believe that Trump will be the presumptive 2024 GOP nominee for president. So we'll see what happens, right?
That's right. So we're going to move on to, because we have several stories here, Jess, and we're going to discuss, of course. This is almost a continuation, because now we discover there's another Israeli spyware maker, basically hacking every single iPhone, around the world, and they got exposed, and they have to shut down. But anyway, we've witnessed Israel, and we've talked about it, soldiers raiding Al-Aqsa Mosque, arresting worshippers, beating them, desecrating the mosque, going in there with their shoes and firing rubber bullets and smoke bombs and so forth. As you know, in Palestine, we are fortunate. Palestinians, they celebrate Easter twice. The Catholic Easter, and then we have the Greek Orthodox Easter, and the vast majority of Palestinians are of the Greek Orthodox faith. So that's the big celebration, and especially on Holy Saturday, where thousands of people descend on the Holy Sepulchre to partake. And this year, Israel decided to limit the numbers of visitors going into the old city, citing safety. Okay, now all of a sudden they're concerned about Palestinian safety. I've recently, and others, this is not my creation, but many people posted thousands and hundreds of pictures of Palestinians celebrating, going all the way back to the invention of the camera, Jess, showing crowds of Christians at the Holy Sepulchre, on the roof, on the side, etc. No one, we don't have a single documentation that there was a stampede or a fire, and people managed to go and celebrate, and they don't need anyone's protection. And then recently, again, I said they haven't learned their lesson. Like they've abused now and Ramadan for Muslims, and then now they moved on to Christians, and they were preventing them and pushing them and shoving them. And again, under that whole pretext that they're trying to make it safe and secure for everyone.
Well, it's a joke, Jamal, and you know it, and we know it, and I know it. The world knows it, that this pretense of protecting Palestinians, that's their hasbara, that's the statement, is a complete joke. It's a restriction of religious freedom. It's a restriction of religious movement. It's a restriction, and in some ways, Jamal, it's an attempt to restrict not just Palestinian pilgrims from visiting the Holy Sepulchre, but it's an attack on all Christians, I think, because even the previous Catholic Easter, the Sunday before, had some difficulties. This Orthodox Easter, this this previous Sunday, was severely limited. And what are we to say? What is the world to say against the Hasbara campaign of the Israeli government when they say they're protecting Palestinians? Palestinians do not feel protected when they're limited from going to the Holy Sepulchre. I mean, come on. The Holy Sepulchre, Jamal, is one of the most important Christian shrines and places in Christianity. I mean, you have two of the holiest Christian sites in Palestine, right? The Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. And these are traditionally, just like important spaces for Christians. And yet, each year around Christmas, around Easter, the Israeli regime continues to play these games and restrict religious freedom. Uh, the only democracy in the Middle East, Jamal, restricting religious freedom, doesn't pass the smell test.
It doesn't, and we're not even talking about Jerusalemites going into the Holy Sepulchre. We're talking also about Christians who live, for example,
Right.
in Bethlehem, which is literally 20 minutes away. They are
Right.
prevented. They need special permits to enter Jerusalem. This is in general 365 days a year, so they have to apply for permits months in advance. And very few of them are granted, a small percentage. So right there again, the Israeli authorities are controlling who can come in and who can go out. People, Christians in Gaza, which is a very, very small minority in Gaza, they've applied months in advance. Some of them were granted permits, and then they canceled them at the last minute.
At the last minute, right.
At the last minute, they decided, no, you cannot come in. So why is Israel put in charge of controlling the movement of Palestinian Christians and Muslims? I mean, they are the arbitrators, they are the controllers, what have you, and every year it just keeps getting worse and worse.
Right, and I just want to not to harp on this point, but it's important for our viewers and listeners to know, for example, around Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Haram Sharif in Jerusalem is supposed to be under the administrative control and direction of King Abdullah of Jordan, right? And he's supposed to be apprised and responsible for those activities. He continues to be denigrated. He continues to be humiliated in the face of all these assaults on the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Haram Sharif. And Jamal, this Friday is the end. Well, Thursday into Friday is the end of Ramadan. It's probably going to be another big event that's going to happen this Friday at Friday prayer. So we'll see what happens. I'm concerned about it, but I wish this would make the mainstream media or some media, Jamal, where the attacks on Christian Palestinians and Christians all over the world by the apartheid regime is getting no mention in the mainstream media.
That's right. So moving on to the next story, Jess.
Spyware.
Citizen.
Hey.
Well, let me start by first giving kudos to Citizen Lab. So
Yes.
Citizen Lab, which focuses on human rights and technology, published a report revealing and outing Quad Dreams spy software, which is used against journalists in particular and dissidents around the world. I mean, we've reported on Israeli spywares, your favorite manufacturer, right?
Right.
In which was blacklisted in this country, Jess. And now there's another one. After Israel said, "Oh no, we're not going to be, doing that. We're not going to be supplying despotic regimes and spy agencies with this spyware." But this one, the Quad Dreams spy software, is very dangerous because it really is used against journalists, and dissidents. It targets as a specific target.
That's right, Jamal. And the fact that they've targeted journalists and they've sold this spyware to despotic, governments in order to spy on journalists all over the world. It's the kind of story that needs special attention. Kudos goes to the investigative journalism that was done to uncover this. But let me ask you a question. Why does anybody believe anything coming from the Israeli government when they talk about how they're going to protect, against the use of spyware? It's such a joke. I mean, and yeah, Quadream closed, but I have a prediction that there are probably many more, and maybe Quadream will reopen and repackage itself in a different vein. I mean,
This is it. We've reported on Pegasus. That's the spyware I was referring to, manufactured by NSO.
Right.
And it took years for the United States Justice Department basically to blacklist it from this country.
But they still use it, Jamal. Here's the thing: the CIA still uses it. The NSA still uses it in this country. It's still being used. I mean, that's part of the story that's being, continues to be neglected. And we know that other despotic regimes in Saudi Arabia, the king there continues to use it. UAE continues to use it. It's used all over the world still, Jamal. That's
you have no security, no privacy for anyone in the world. And I don't want to get into this story. I just mentioned it quickly, but just like a couple of days ago, Elon Musk was getting interviewed, and he admitted that Twitter allowed all kinds of governments to spy on people's private information. And when he was asked, because your tweets, you can make them private if you choose, or most people don't, so they're public. But then the key question when he was asked, well, what about DMs, private messages, did they have access to those? And he said, shockingly, yes.
That's right. That was his BBC interview. Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
That big deal.
I'm just like tagging this into this story because just a warning to our viewers and listeners: nothing is sacred, nothing is safe. You got to be very careful about your communications and about your social media platforms.
That's right. But I would say at the center of the universe of the use of spyware to spy on the global community, the center of that spying universe is the apartheid state, Jamal. I don't think there's any doubt about it. You have one of the key agencies in the United States, our intelligence services, using Israeli spyware. So, go figure. Come on. And you're right. I mean, nothing will be done about this. Elon Musk admitted as such, and people are not taking this as seriously as they should. It's a big deal.
And our final story, and this is the question. I'll put it in a question. Just why is the son of the late Shah of Iran visiting Israel?
I have an easy answer for you, Jamal. It's an easy answer. Why does Andrew Cuomo become the leader of the Israel for Democrats PAC? Why do all disgraced politicians and disgraced people line up behind AIPAC and the apartheid regime when they want a makeover, Jamal? Where do all disgraced people eventually go? They make the visit to the apartheid state. They join AIPAC. Why else would the son of the Shah of Iran, especially now, go to Israel? You tell me.
Well, first I'm gonna read you his statement that he posted on Twitter, and the Hasbaristas are making a big deal out of it. I see almost every 5 minutes a tweet about it. They're welcoming him. Oh, it's
of
great,
course,
etc. Praising him, and he says, "I'm traveling to Israel to deliver a message of friendship from the Iranian people." Now, here's somebody who lives in exile, right? Engage Israeli water experts. He's now on ways to address the regime's abuse of Iran's natural resources and pay respects to the victims of the Holocaust. I want the people of Israel to know that the Islamic Republic does not represent the Iranian people. As far as I know, they've represented the Iranian people for decades. But anyway, these are, I have 3 reasons, okay, why someone like him would do it. Just the number 1 reason is, and this is maybe people are not paying attention to it, is Saudi-Iranian rapprochement.
Yes.
So this past couple of weeks, and we've talked about this, how Saudi Arabia shocked the world and the United States, deciding to restore relations with Iran. In fact, today I saw that the Iranians have invited the king to go there, to travel there. But anyway, they're reopening their embassies and restoring diplomatic relations. And this whole idea about, of course, going after Iran's nuclear reactors is kind of has been put on the shelf in the Biden administration's foreign policy, because he's putting all his resources and energy of the United States towards Ukraine.
That's right.
So they're just trying to find something. And who did they look and chase and find and sponsor? No one else but the forgotten and irrelevant. I would say irrelevant, because that's my reason number 1. When you're irrelevant and someone knocks at your door and say, we're going to make you an important person, now you could call yourself the Shah of Iran, and you speak on behalf of the Iranian people, and we're going to welcome you with a red carpet when you land at Ben Gurion Airport. Okay, so that's the reason number 2. They just pumped his head up, and he, all of a sudden, the only pictures you used to see about him, Jess, is when he was dancing in a London nightclub. I mean, this is how much foreign policy he's in control of. And so that's the reason number 2. They gave him some, short-lived, I would say, relevancy, and he's going there. And the reason number 3, which is a very important reason, the dude ran out of money.
Well, yeah.
He squandered all the money that his dad funneled out of the country before he escaped.
That's right, Jamal. He ran out of money.
And he's been living between London and Los Angeles.
That's right. That's right.
And
the guy has no credibility with the Iranian community anywhere in the world, Jamal.
Well, he has a little bit of followers, which I call them the Shah and Shah followers, but
even, it's so small. So small.
Even those who disagree with the current regime in Iran, I don't think they're waiting to bring him back into power.
No, but it's part
remembering the Savak security services that his father used to have.
But Jamal, it's part of the people. But it's part of the Israeli dream to install him as the Shah, because of that history with his late father, obviously. So the Israeli demagogues, Jamal, have lots of bizarre fantasies about the world. One is bringing the Shah son back to be the Shah of Iran, and their crazy idea of maps, that don't even recognize the existence of Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, and parts of Jordan. So there's a lot of delusional activity going on in the apartheid state right now. I do want to just say something quick. You said something about Saudi Arabia and Iran reestablishing diplomatic relations. Maybe we'll get this on next week. But the Saudi Arabia has invited a delegation of Hamas politicians to also visit Saudi Arabia to reestablish diplomatic ties there too. So it's kind of interesting to see what the Crown Prince is doing in terms of shaking up the geopolitical scene right now in the world.
Yeah, I mean, from their interpretation, of course, after this so-called Abraham Accords, the Israelis were waiting in the wings for Saudi Arabia to join in. In fact, that's what Netanyahu was bragging about soon, we'll have relations with Saudi Arabia and so forth. And instead of shaking the hands of Benjamin Netanyahu, they shook the hands of the Iranians, and that was a total shock. So they had to scramble quickly, and I feel like they almost like dug up a skeleton, because no one hears about this son of the late Shah. I told you, the only time I used to notice him when gossip publication would show him in a nightclub, drinking or whatever, partying. And now they're presenting him as a head of a state and a spokesperson representing the Iranian people, and so forth. And the guy drank the Kool-Aid, and we just talked about the reasons why he did that. He needs money. He needs money, and he needs publicity.
Yeah, and I guess he can join the ranks of Andrew Cuomo and all the others who, after they've been disgraced and humiliated, make that trip to Tel Aviv, Jamal. So one of many.
You've been listening to Arab Talk on KPOO San Francisco 89.5 FM. Go to our website, arabtalkradio.com, to download the latest shows, and we'll talk to you next week.
We'll see you next week.